Okay, so for this exercise, we are going to learn about UV mapping in Maya. So I'm going to have you grab this folder from the PC server. And so it's in the Intro to Modeling class, and the folder we're going to grab is Maya UV mapping. So you want to copy that guy over to your desktop. I already have, so I'll just paste it and overwrite it. Okay, then we're going to go ahead and open up Maya. And whenever I teach UVs, I first like to explain the just how they work basically and what they are. And then I like to do a very simple exercise where we just try to recreate the UV mapping of polygon primitives, just so you can, no pun intended, wrap your head around it. Yeah, you'll get that pun in a little bit.
I see you said before.
Yeah, I don't like puns, but yeah, I just did one. I was conscious this time of it. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a few primitives. I'm going to build a box here. I'm going to build a cylinder. And I'm going to build a sphere. And so if I put a texture map on these right now, so I'm going to select my box here, and I'm going to right click and say assign new material. And I'm going to do a Lambert material. And I'm going to add a color to it. So I'm going to click on the little checker box for create render node. And then I'm going to apply a texture map that I have inside of that folder. So I'm going to go into my UV mapping folder, and I have this guy, my UV mapper JPEG. And it's just a bunch of numbers and a bunch of grid lines. And I'm going to apply that guy to that object, and you can see here that there it has all the numbers on it and the grid lines. Now those numbers and grid lines are there to basically tell us if our mapping coordinates are any good. So if we have like distortion free coordinates where you can see these are kind of wavy, when our coordinates are wavy, that means that they're being distorted.
Oh, so that means they're no good.
Yeah, and when the numbers are forward, that means that the UVs are forward. When the numbers are backwards, it means that our UVs are flipped. So the coordinates on this sphere are pretty good, except for they're a little bit warped, because you can see that with the grid lines. And that's what the grid lines are there to tell us, is like, hey dude, your UVs are a little bit warped because the grid lines are warping. On this one, the top looks pretty good, but the side looks a little wacky, right? Something's wrong there. And then on this one, it all looks good. So we have UV coordinates mapped perfectly on all sides. We don't have any waviness. So this is kind of what you would want in a perfect world your UV coordinates to look like. And this little mapper texture is meant, it is made for just checking UVs. So it's not supposed to be a texture that you're going to use or anything. It's just checking the quality of your mapping coordinates. Okay, what are mapping coordinates? Mapping coordinates are very simply a two-dimensional coordinate for a three-dimensional object. That's the best way you can think about it. Okay, so if I open up the UV editor, which I can do by clicking on this little icon right here on the toolbar, this will open up, oh wait, no, I got that wrong. Where is it? There it is, this one. It will open up my UV editor. And then over here is the UV toolkit, which allows us to basically edit the UVs. So this is what I'm looking at with a standard box. So these UVs are basically how this box is born. These are the coordinates. So what it is if I turn off the texture map, so all you can see is the coordinates, we can see that this is very similar to like a cardboard box. So if you were to get a cardboard box that was folded out flat, and then you needed to fold it up into a three-dimensional box, you'd basically make a fold here, a fold here, a fold here, fold it up around itself, and then take the two sides and fold it down on itself. And that would make this three-dimensional object. So what you're seeing here in the UV editor is this three-dimensional object reduced to two-dimensional coordinates. And the reason that is because that's what you have to do. If you want to map an image onto a three-dimensional object, you have to give the object two-dimensional coordinates because the image is 2D, okay? And then the object is 3D. without the 2D coordinates to correlate the two, you won't be able to map the image onto it. So what I want to do is, now that we kind of like have a brief understanding of what UVs are, I can show you that if I go into face mode here, I can move these just like I can with sub-object, and see what happens when I move this face. The texture is moving because I'm actually sliding that face. I'm going to turn my texture back on. I'm sliding that face over to this location on the map, and so now it's displaying those things under the map. This face over here is going to get distorted because it's being stretched. You can see that. But the way to think of it is, you take the polygon and you place it on the texture map the way you want it to display. All right. So what I want to do now is, now that we kind of understand what UVs are and what they're doing, I want to take this object and recreate it. So I'm going to turn off texturing because we don't really need it. And I'm going to go into object mode here. And I'm going to make a copy of this box. And then I'm going to go into the UV editor, and I'm going to say edit, delete UVs, and I'm just going to blow those away. What I want to do is I want to teach you guys how to recreate those UVs that we just saw. So the reason why this is a lot easier is because we have a template. We know what we need to get to, and we can select that at any time. So you can see the template, and then we have the new mesh, and what we got to do is now make UVs that match this one. Easy, right? Okay. To create UVs on an object that doesn't have UVs, we have a number of options. The most simple option is planar mapping. And planar mapping I can do by going up into the UV menu set. I think I can also create UVs in here by going to create, and it'll do the same thing. But I'm used to doing it up here, so I'm going to do it in here. So I'm going to go UV, and I'm going to create camera-based UV coordinates. What that'll do is, based on the orientation of my camera, it will create mapping coordinates that are basically projected right through the camera, and there's the UV coordinates that it will generate. So what I could do is, I could actually come in here and select these faces one at a time, and I could camera project them. So I could say UV camera projection, and so what we're seeing here is that one face. Can come in here and move it off, and I could go around this entire thing, and I'm going to go into create here and do it from here. So I'm going to use the UV toolkit, and I'm going to do a camera based projection, and what I'm doing is I'm mapping each one of these faces individually, and you can see that they're kind of peeling off, and so these are the three that were originally all camera mapped together. All right, and then finally I'm going to grab this one, camera based, and I'll do this one, camera based. And so what I've done is I've reduced all 6 sides of my box there into planar mapping coordinates, and then now I could take those and I could reassemble those. So what I could do is I could be like, okay, on this one, this face right here is down here. So I'm going to grab this one and go that face, and I'm going to put it down here. Let's move the rest of these out of the way. This one here, the next face up is the top. So I'm going to grab this one on the top. I'm going to put it right up there. And then the back is that one. So I'm going to grab my back and I'm going to put it right above. And then the bottom goes up at the very top. So I'm going to go to the bottom on this one. And I'll put it up on the top. And then I have the right side, right flap. So I'll grab the right flap, and then I will go left flap. And there I have basically reconstructed the mapping coordinates of the box, except for these are a lot bigger. So you can see these dark tiles here. Those little dark tiles are called the UV one-to-one space. And so what that means is that when you create UVs, if it goes outside of this one-to-one space, what happens is that these are all tiles. So it's automatically going to retile that texture. So if I make this thing bigger, it's basically going to map it, that texture map on here. And then any of these boxes that fall, any of the UVs that fall outside of that box, it's going to repeat it in horizontally and vertically. All right. So whenever we create UVs, we want to make sure that they fit inside of this single one-to-one space. And so I can do this, I can reassemble it because right now it's kind of different, right? I have this one which is all connected, and I have this guy which is not connected. So if I want to connect these, what I can do is go to edge mode here. And what I have to do is I have to find the edges that correspond. So I'm going to select this edge, and this edge, and then I'm going to come down here to cut and sew, and I'm going to sew the UVs. We also have the ability to move them. So did you notice what happened? I'm going to move this guy a little bit farther away so we can see. So I'm going to grab these three and move these up. All right, and then I'm going to go, okay, edge, and these two edges, whenever I select one edge, it'll select the neighboring edge for me. So that's why when we select one, it always selects another. All right, watch what happens when I just go ahead and do sew on this one. My UVs basically got distorted there. So if you want to sew these polygons together and have them undistort, what you have to do is use the stitch together. Stitch together will move the UV without distorting it. So, and then I'm going to come in here to edge mode, and I'm going to go to this one, stitch together. Whoops, that shouldn't have done that. Sometimes this thing glitches out. I just hit stitch together and it moved it. And it will typically move the neighbor edge to the one you click first. So if I want this one to move to this one, I have to click this one first. Stitch together. Last time I hit stitch together, it actually did a sew. And so if you rewind the video, you might be able to prove that I accidentally fat fingered it. But let's pretend like I didn't, because sometimes it does glitch out. Okay, and then I'm going to say stitch together, stitch together. And when I did stitch together, did you notice something? This edge was actually over here. When you use stitch together, it's also going to automatically orient this polygon. So it's going to rotate it or flip it or whatever it needs to do so that this edge ends up coinciding with this edge. All right. And so there I recreated my box coordinates, but what's wrong with it? So this one versus this one. Does it look the same? You can answer.
A little smaller and a
Yeah,
little...
just one smaller than the other.
What else though?
And the line is a little bit curved.
Yeah, dude, this thing is very wonky. So if I apply the texture map to this, so I'm going to say assign existing material, and I'm going to put the Lambert 2 on here. If I go in, you'll see that the boxes aren't kind of lining up, and they're also kind of waving. And that's because the UVs are also kind of distorted and waving. So if I want to do this one again, I'm going to show you another method that works out a lot cleaner. I'm going to select this guy, and instead of using a planar map where I map each face individually, I'm going to map the whole thing using something called automatic. So I'm going to go to create here, and I'm going to use automatic, and I'm going to set automatic to 6 sides, and I'm going to say apply. And what automatic will do is it will actually use this gizmo and will kind of box unwrap it. So this thing will actually do the 6 planar projections without me having to orient my camera for all 6 sides. So it'll just automatically make it. It's a 6 camera projection based on the center of my object. Watch how much faster this goes. It's so much easier. So I'm going to be like, okay, this one here goes there. So this one here, I'm going to kind of recreate it over here. This one goes here, and then this one goes there. This one goes up here. This one goes there. Okay, so this one goes up here, and then the bottom goes there. And so I'm going to grab the bottom of this one. I'm going to put it up here, and then we have right side. Okay, it goes to the right, so I'm going to grab the right side of this one. Okay, it goes here. Sweet. And now I'm going to grab this one and see where it goes, and now I'm going to go with this one. Okay, now I'm going to do the exact same operation I did last time. So I'm going to go, okay, cool. I've got them organized properly. Now I'm going to go into edge mode and select the one that I want the other one to move to. And I'm going to say stitch together. Then I'm going to go there, stitch together. And the stitch together will also orient the other UV based on the one you select first. So if I want this one to move to this one and reorient to this one, I select this edge first. Say stitch together. Come in here, stitch together, stitch together. Awesome. So this one is a lot straighter because I used a projection method that kept it more mechanical. And now I can move the shell around. So if I go into shell mode, that will select my entire UV shell. If I go into UV mode, then I can move the vertices, or they call them UVs, but they're basically 2D vertices. And I can move the UVs individually. So if I'm moving the entire thing, I generally use shell. And then if I'm moving individual UVs, then I go UV. And you can also use face mode. So you can grab the faces and move those around. You can grab edges. So they behave similar to polygons, even though they're not polygons. And then what I want to do is whenever I make a UV coordinates, which I've just done, I want to make sure that I place them in this 1-to-1 box right here. How do I know which is the original box? Because it's this one that says 0 right next to it that has the axes there. So I'm going to scale these down and I'm going to put it in there, and it's awesome. All right, cool. Excellent. All right, let's do the next one. So the next one is a cylinder. And so basically what we're looking at here is the top is a cylindrical or a planar projection. So that's a planar. The bottom is a planar. But that middle one is something new that you haven't seen yet because I haven't showed you. This one is actually a cylindrical projection. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to planar map the top and bottom. So I'm going to come in here. First I want to delete the UVs and make a copy. So I'm going to make a copy of this guy just so I can recreate the UVs. And I'm going to say edit, delete to remove the UVs. And now I'm going to recreate those UV mapping coordinates, showing you some new projection methods. So this time I'm going to do the old method, which you guys were familiar with, which is planar. And this time I'm going to select the top and bottom together. And I'm going to use a camera-based projection. Oops. There we go. And the first thing we'll notice is that the top and bottom are different sized. And the reason for that is because I used a camera that actually had perspective on it. I used my perspective camera. Watch what happens if I do that again, but use an orthographic camera. So I'm going to use the top view, which does not have any perspective information on it. And I'm going to say camera based. And I gotta maximize that. It should work. Camera based. If you want to get to the options for these, oh, that's weird. So this thing is not using my orthographic camera for some reason, even though it should. Let's try it with this one. Camera based. Apply. Weird. Okay, so this doesn't work anymore. It only works with perspective, so that's cool. I just wanted to prove that it would have mapped properly, but since it didn't, it's no big deal. All right, so I'm going to come in here and grab these from the shell mode, and I'm going to move them. So what I have here is the top view and the bottom view, and you'll notice that the top view has the numbers oriented properly, but the bottom view has the numbers going backwards. Why do you think that is? Anyone? I'll tell you why. Because I mapped these both at the same time. This one was facing the camera. This one was facing away from the camera. So now the bottom UVs are actually backwards. And the reason I can tell that easily is because I turned on my color coding in the UV editor. So this one is just regular wireframe. if I turn on color coding, it's going to tell me that if my UVs are blue, that they're going facing the right way. And if they're red, they're facing the wrong way. How can I fix this? I can just grab the shell. So I can grab this UV shell, and I can come down here into the transform tools in my UV toolkit. And I have two options. I can rotate them, and sometimes that'll work. In this case, it's not going to. And it'll just rotate them in increments of 90 degrees. Or I can flip them in U or flip them in V. So right now they are upside down, so I'm going to flip them in V. And there we magically fix the problem. So once they turn blue and they show correctly in the UV editor, then they're fixed. All right, the next thing I might want to do is I may want to grab these two shells and make them the same size. So I can just superimpose this right on top of this one and scale it up. Okay. And then in the reference model, which is my primitive, the top went on top. Okay, cool. So I'm going to grab this one, and I'm going to put the top UV shell on top. I'm going to put the other one on the bottom. And you'll notice here that I'm missing UVs for the cylindrical part of the model. That's because I plan on doing that later. So the way I'm going to do that is go into face mode, and I'm going to select all those faces. And now I'm going to use a projection method to create UVs called cylindrical. And cylindrical will do exactly what it says. It will wrap a cylindrical projection right onto my model. This thing's kind of confusing because it overlays the mesh. So I'm going to grab it and drag it. So I'm going to grab that cylindrical projection. And if you click on this little red thing here that looks like a cross, you can, I lost it. You can switch modes. And if you lose it, oh crap, you can click on your last tool to bring it up, or you can go into the inputs, which is polycylindrical projection, and there my gizmo will come back. So this little guy here, this red cross, is what I'm going to click. And this red cross will click you between rotation mode, transform mode. And what I want to do is I want to transform this thing up just so we can see it. So with it on the object, it's really hard to explain how it works. And if I click that again, it'll basically cycle me through the modes, which are move mode or rotate mode. All right, so we're going to come here, and this little gizmo here allows me to change the scale. So if I change the scale of these coordinates, I'm going to drag. You can see here what's happening to my UVs. They're getting bigger. So the smaller this thing gets, the larger the UVs get. The bigger these things get, the smaller the UVs get. This little guy, if I grab these little red guys and wrap them around, that is basically going to wrap the projection all the way around the cylinder. And so it's kind of like a bear hug, with the seam of this cylinder being at the back. So if I want to change the seam, I can rotate this guy, and my UV seam, that's where it cuts, will go wherever this little gray edge here hits the mesh. All right. So I want my seam to be right along the back, so I'm going to move it back to the back. And then I'm going to move this thing back down now that I've showed you how this little manipulator works. I'm going to click on the red, and I'm going to move it back down because you want it to wrap around your object. And I'm going to scale it back down so that it actually fits my object. And then if I unselect it, if I can click on last tool, which was the gizmo, or I can go into my history like I did. So last time I dropped it, I'm like, oh crap, I clicked off of it, I can't get it back. No, you can get it back. You try last tool. If that won't bring it back, then you can go over here to your history, and you just go on that planar projection and click on it, and that'll bring your little gizmo back, and now I'm back in business. But I'm pretty much done with the UVs. If I want it to be like the other one, I think the other one was kind of like this, where it's kind of straight up and down. These are actually not great UVs. But whatever, I'm just trying to recreate it the way it was. So I'm going to put this one on top. Oops, this one on the bottom. I'm going to go to shell mode to do that. And then maybe I'm going to select both these shells and scale them down just a little bit. All right. And then for this one, I'm not going to be so meticulous and trying to get it absolutely the same. I'm just going to get relatively close, because the purpose of this exercise is to just get you guys used to mapping projections and the different ones. And I'm showing you the ones that are most commonly used. So we have planar so far, and then we have cylindrical. And then the last thing I want to do is put my UVs into the one-to-one space. All right, and then we'll do this final one, which is the spherical. And so this is a spherical unwrap. And we have a spherical projection that we can use to do this. So I'm going to duplicate this guy. Alrighty. And then I'm going to delete the UVs, blow them away. And then I'm going to recreate that using the mapping coordinates that we have in Maya. So I'm going to say create. I'm going to do a cylindrical. Say apply. Oh crap, wrong one. I'm going to do a spherical. And you can see here that it looks pretty much the same right out of the gate. So if I go into object mode and we look at both of these spheres, you're like, yeah, they pretty much look the same, right? Except for up here at the top, oh my God, did that become a jumbled mess. And so what that is these UVs are not mapping the same because these UVs are all being welded to a point. And so for me to get these to work, I would actually have to come in here and say, I'd have to cut these. And then I would have to unfold them, which I'm going to show you later. So I'm going to show you a tool that will actually get this object to look just like this one, but not just yet. So if we do a spherical on this one, we can go ahead and map it and not worry about the poles that get all screwed up. And I'm just going to go into UV mode and I'm going to scale this thing down. And I'm going to place it in the one-to-one space. And there we have recreated our primitive maps using the projections that are available to us in Maya. And for the most part, they look pretty much the same. So that's the first step of this operation. All right, the next one, I'm going to just save all these and put them in a layer. And I'm just calling it UV projections. And that's because that's my dummy little setup for teaching projections. And so this is 219 UVs desktop. Okay. Next thing I want to do is I want to talk about actually making something that you could use. So if we go into that UV mapping folder, I also gave you a couple texture maps for cereal boxes. So this one is for awesome C3POs, and then here's the final result. And this is also a great little intro exercise for how to do UV on a working object. So I'm going to do the box, cereal box. And I'm going to first do it the way I just showed you in the first exercise. And then I will do it again, showing you a much better technique that is more advanced. So I'm going to come into poly modeling here and scroll up to the top. And I'm going to create a box. I'm going to make this guy cereal box sized. I love making cereal boxes. There we go. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to blow away the UV coordinates because I want to do custom ones. So I'm going to say edit, delete. And then I'm going to select my object. And I'm going to say create camera based. So, and oh no, not camera based. I want to say create and I want to do automatic. I want to make sure I have 6 sides because my box has 6 sides, and I'm going to say apply. And so this is the one that uses the 6-sided projection. And it gives me all my UVs basically as shells here. I'm going to take these and peel them off to the side. And then I'm going to assign a new texture map to my object. So I'm going to go into object mode. And I'm going to select the object and right click and say assign new material. I'm going to do a Lambert material. And then I'm going to go into the material attributes for that material. And I'm going to assign a texture map. So I'm going to click on the create render node next to the color channel. Then I'm going to assign that C3PO's serial box texture map. And so you'll see when it comes in, oh God, does that look wrong, right? So what I have to do now is I have to go into my UV editor and I'm going to turn on show texture map, which for some reason it doesn't want to show up because I did the wrong one. There we go. So it's kind of hard to work on these little monitors because they don't have much resolution. So like when the icons get all squished, it's tricky. So it's not that one, it's this one. This is kind of nifty though. This is an overlay. So what it does allow you to do is kind of like fade the texture map in or out. So if the texture map is kind of like competing too much, you can turn on the overlay and kind of dial it down. So this is a new feature that's pretty useful. All right, so what I want to do is if I want that C3POs to be on the front of this serial box, what I have to do is find that face and then I have to move it over here, and you can see that there it is on the serial box. And then now I can go into UV mode and I can actually scale this thing to fit. And now I have C3POs on the front, and then I can kind of line them up a little bit better. All right, then I can go to the top view, which is this one. This one goes up here, so I'm going to bring it up here. I can also scale these. So the first one I did, I moved the UVs. You can scale it and move it into position like that. And I'm not being too crazy about lining it up perfectly because that's better accomplished later after I've sewn everything together. So I'm going to come in here. Okay, I got this side. This one goes over here. And what I'm trying to do is just get them all in the right place first before I start fine-tuning them. There we go. And then I'm going to go down here. And this one belongs down here. And then let's do this side. This guy goes over here. There we go. And then finally the back. And what do we notice that's wrong with the back? It is flipped upside down, right? So if I want that to display properly, what I have to do is go into the transform tools over here, and I'm going to flip in V. And so I flipped in V so his head is oriented correctly, but you'll notice that the text is backwards. So now I have to flip in U, and there we go. Now we get it. So what I want to do is I want to go around to all of these and make sure that they're not backwards. So I'm going to read them all, and they look pretty good. And now I'm just about done. So the next thing I want to do is sew everything together, because if I don't sew it together, I end up with like weird gaps, and that's going to create texture artifacts. And so clean practice is to, after you're done, go into edge mode, and I'm going to select the edge I want the other one to move to, which is this one. And then I'm going to come in here into my transform tools, and I'm going to say stitch together. And I'm going to grab my front of the box first edge and say stitch together. This one stitch together. And this one stitch together. And now that I have everything stitched together, now I will go in and do my fine tune, which my fine tune is at the UV level, and I can be like, okay, now I can place these guys precisely where I want them to go. And these don't have to be perfect. There's a little bit of fudge room you have with UVs. It's really it's awesome because in 3D you don't get much fudge factor, but in UVs you do, and so I find it kind of relieving because you don't have to be so turbo precise. You got to be like reasonably precise. All right, cool. And there we go. I got my box texture maps. Awesome. All right, and that only took 6 hours, right? So let me show you a faster way to do the exact same thing. And so this one, I used an automatic map to do it, and it turned out great, right? But I'm going to show you now a modern tool that's absolutely amazing that allows us to do the same thing. So I'm going to say edit, delete, and I'm going to delete the UVs on this new one. And on this one, what I'm going to do is, oh crap, I deleted the wrong one. I want to delete the UVs on this one. So edit, delete. On this new one, I'm going to first planar map this thing. So in order for this to work, I first have to give it UV coordinates. And the key is all the UV coordinates have to be pre-welded. So a certain type of coordinate that works and pre-welds everything every single time is camera-based projection. So I'm going to camera project that, and it creates UVs on every single polygon in the mesh, but it also sews all the edges together, which is what I want. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and go, okay, I'm going to look at my UV coordinates for my texture map, and what I'm looking for is the cuts for the box. So basically the top gets cut on these corners. So I'm going to come in here and go edge, 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 and I'm going to say cut. And the bottom, if I look at the texture map, these edges get cut. So I'm going to go, okay, for this one I want to cut these edges. And then for the back, it's basically this edge, which is right there. And so I'm going to select this edge and I'm going to say cut. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab all my UVs and I'm going to use the magic button called unfold. And unfold is an algorithm that will take the object and lay it out flat based on where it's cut. So this went a lot faster. It's already pre-sewn. So all I have to do is rotate this guy into position, and then I can go straight to my final step, which was tweaking. So let's see here. It pays to learn new tools. So I know people who are in the business for like 20 years and they weren't aware of this thing, and I showed it to them and they were like mind blown. And I was like, yeah, dude, like get with the times. So this is called Unfold, and it's modern technology. So gotta love the tech. And Unfold works for like 90% of everything you'll ever need to UV. And you might be like, why did you show me the other stuff then? Because those other ones will work when Unfold doesn't, which is of the other 10% of the time. Okay, and I'm not being too crazy here, but that went a lot faster, right? Because here's where I need my overlay to come back up a little bit because I can't tell what the corner is. All right, there we go. All right, but that second one went a lot faster because I bypassed all the sewing. So this is my preferred method for sure, and that's what you want to master is Unfold moving forward. But now you have it all. The next question most people have when it comes to texture mapping is, okay, cool, you showed me how to do a cereal box, but what if I wanted to change the color of this to like a wood or something, or I wanted to put a different material on the side versus the top? And so my answer to that is very easily. So I'm just going to go find a wood texture. and download it. Oops. And so if you wanted to put a different texture map on this object, all you would have to do is bring it into Photoshop. So I'm going to come in here and go, I'm going to put this in my UV mapping folder. I'm going to launch Photoshop. And I need to do something in Maya. I'm going to grab my object. And what I want to do is I want to make a copy of this UV map here. And this is called a UV snapshot. So I can click on this little camera here, and it will take a 2D image of this and put it in a format that I can read into Photoshop. So again, that was this little camera, and it'll take a UV snapshot. I'm going to make it a JPEG. And I'm going to just put it on the desktop, and I'm going to call it out UV. And image size, I want to make it the same size as my texture map. So I'm going to open up my texture map, which is in here. So image size, I think it's 1024 by 1024. No, it's got an oddball. So I'm just going to do it in Photoshop. So this is an oddball texture format. So I'm going to say File, Open. Oops. I could do it that way though. So that was image size. I'll just use the oddball number. 1102 by 956. So I'm going to come in here and go UV snapshot 1102 by, what did I say? 986. No one remembers. 956. And I'm going to turn off lock aspect ratio, so 1102 by 956. And then I'm going to say apply. And it's going to write an image that exact same size, which I can bring into Photoshop. And there it is, my out UV. And I can copy that guy and lay it right over the top of my image and say select color range. I'm going to select a black pixel and then feather it and then cut it. And now what I have here is an overlay which shows me where my UV coordinates are. So right there, that shows me my UV coordinates. So if I want to put wood on the front of the box, all I have to do is open up my wood texture map, copy it, paste it, put it right in there, and then I will save this out as a new texture map. So I will call this C3PO Serial Box Mod. And now if I apply this in Maya, I can say material attributes. And I'm going to apply the mod texture. Now we have the front of that box as wood. So this is how you apply a texture to different sides of a polygon object. You just have to relate it to the UV coordinates inside of Photoshop and then resave it, and there you go. You can change every single side of that. All right, so that was our exercise. I'm going to flip this back to the old, so material attributes, I'm going to flip it back to the pre-modded one. So C3PO Serial Box, there we go. And so that is an intro to UVs in a nutshell. This is an in-class exercise, so I'm basically just going to want everyone to do what I did and then take a render of their serial box. The thing at the end with changing it to wood is not required. That's just like an extra thing that I showed you guys. So if you want to explore UVs further and texture mapping, you may do that. All right, that's the end of that one.